Going to the ER with any sort of chronic condition is usually a place of last resort and is oftentimes a hellscape or invalidating at best. Um, hey folks, I'm Annette. My website is AnnetteLeonard.com, and you are watching or listening to the Chronic Wellness Podcast. If you pay attention here, you will know that recently I was absent for several weeks, which is something I give myself a lot of grief for, and in these chronic lives is sometimes pretty unavoidable. I always imagine that I'm going to bank episodes and be able to load them from my sick bed, and that's rarely what happens. And so just the realities of living with chronic conditions. But some backstory. So my doc prescribed a med that when I read the leaflet, it said side effect may cause headaches. And that's always just a like, ooh, for me, because I have daily migraines, and anything that causes headaches can really ignite those. And that is what happened. About 4 days into taking the med, headache ignited that was voracious. If you have ever vomited from pain, not from nausea, but from pain, it was that kind of intensity where for a month I have been in isolation, in darkness, without sensory input, away from my dogs and my spouse, and in fear and sadness and pain. And about 10 days into that, my doctor said, Annette, you have to go to the ER. You have to verify this isn't a brain bleed. You have to check and see if it is meningitis. And so we struck out and went to the ER. And as we know, the ER is triage. The ER is urgent. And so many people in this country do not have health care, and yet it is where they have to go because they don't have other resources. They don't have a primary care physician. They don't have a doctor. And so it doesn't provide good care for maybe anyone, but certainly not for those of us with chronic conditions. And I reported to the triage nurse, I have not had a headache like this since I had meningitis. And I heard her report to the doctor, this lady has a bad headache. And I was like, that's not exactly what I said to you. And the doctor said to me, well, it sounds like you have a migraine. And I was like, kind of. And I regularly have migraines, and this is of a different order. And just the inability to fully convey, the inability to be fully heard, the kind of brusqueness that has to happen because they're treating so many people, the particular ways in which things land, it is hard to not feel some kind of way. It's hard to not feel sort of invalidated or not seen, in part because they have to see so many people. And I was not bleeding in my brain. They did not test to see if I had aseptic meningitis again, which actually I'm fine with because that requires a spinal tap, which is miserable in and of itself. And I don't know another way to do it, obviously. I don't know how else I could have gotten the tests that I needed without the excruciating time in the waiting room or another place where I could have gotten the testing that I needed without that experience. And yet, obviously, I'm talking to you about it because I wish we had a different way. I wish for those of us in acute distress with chronic underlying situations, we had some other avenue, some other urgent care option that was not so lousy at handling the people aspect of healthcare. But here we are. And I'm lucky I have insurance and that I could go to that visit without risking my housing or food. And so this isn't to say answers, solutions. It's just to say, me too. And these are the things we handle and go through, and wish we had a better way of doing it. So, part of the reason I've been gone, and for those of you who have similar stories, I see you. And I'm sorry we don't have better options. Glad to be with you now. And until we're together again, I hope you can find ways to be well.